The wealthy CEO believed he had buried his past, until he caught sight of a young girl with his eyes, grasping another man's hand. Years ago, Grayson Grant reached the pinnacle of his career, having just clinched one of the most significant deals of his life. His name graced the covers of business magazines, and his visage frequently lit up financial networks. He was the type of individual who kept pushing forward, never glanced back, and refused to let feelings disrupt reason. His existence unfolded like a meticulously planned agenda filled with boardroom discussions, investor conversations, and journeys across the country. And then Rachel appeared. She entered his life like a refreshing breeze, surprising, authentic, and utterly different from anyone he had ever known. She had no interest in his riches or his power. She possessed a serene strength, brimming with fervor for her craft, her aspirations, and her autonomy. For a moment, they thrived in an unusual harmony, his realm of structure and her domain of imaginative disorder. In a cozy coffee shop, she accidentally dropped her sketchbook, scattering its contents across the floor. He stepped in to assist her, unaware that this brief encounter would mark the beginning of an unexpected journey for both of them. Throughout the year, their bond deepened in a manner that unsettled him. Rachel revealed a gentleness within him, posed inquiries that others shied away from, and demanded honesty when he was accustomed to offering only partial responses. And when she confessed her love for him, a part of him contorted in response. Not because he lacked the feeling, but precisely because he felt it, and that was perilous. Grayson grew up with the conviction that feeling deeply was a sign of frailty, that showing one's true self was a defect. When his career required him to move to London for a long-term project, he made a choice that would linger in his mind. He concluded things with Rachel through a brief 3-line text. No communication, no elaboration needed. A final farewell cloaked in the guise of practicality. He reassured himself it was more orderly this way, that she would find a way to move forward, that it was ultimately for the greater good. Rachel lingered on the floor of her modest apartment for hours after receiving that text, her gaze fixed on it, struggling to comprehend how something that had once felt so tangible could vanish so effortlessly. Yet soon she began to experience the initial signs, the queasiness, the weariness, and in just a week she was certain. She was expecting a child. She contemplated revealing it to him. Time and again, her finger lingered just above his name in her phone. Yet each time, she recalled the swiftness with which he had turned and left. She wished for her child to be raised by someone who viewed them as a joy, not a duty. Thus, she decided to embark on the journey of raising her baby solo. Keep it simple. There will be no legal disputes. Simply steadfast resolve. That choice signified the conclusion of her previous existence and the onset of a far more challenging journey. She pursued freelance art projects, spent her evenings instructing painting classes, and sustained herself on coffee and unwavering determination. When her daughter arrived, a petite girl with Grayson's striking blue eyes and golden curls, Rachel chose the name Luna, inspired by the moon that had been her companion during countless sleepless nights. In those formative days, as she cradled Luna to slumber with soothing melodies and gentle assurances, Rachel forged a unique resilience. It emerged not from a place of complete mastery, but from the commitment to be present each day, regardless of fatigue or solitude. Grayson slipped away into the annals of history, or at least that was her impression. Fate has a peculiar talent for resurrecting unfinished tales, often catching us off guard. Rachel's days fell into a cadence, shaped more by need than by ease. Before the sun graced the sky, mornings unfolded with Luna sneaking into her bed, her soft whispers requesting cereal and cartoons. Rachel would wipe the remnants of sleep from her eyes, gather her hair into a casual bun, and carry Luna to the kitchen, where a solitary mug of coffee stood as her shield for the day that lay before her. She remained silent. She was too pressed for time to do so. Amidst painting commissions, part-time work at a local art supply store, and weekend lessons at the community center, Rachel's life was a careful balancing act sustained by passion, fatigue, and quiet determination. Luna blossomed into a curious and joyful child, the type who inquired about everything and laughed with her entire being. She possessed Grayson's ocean blue eyes and radiant smile, yet everything else was distinctly Rachel. Her playful leaps through puddles, her wonder for the stars, and the instinctive way she sought her mother's hand, even in moments of courage. It was a frequent observation that Luna bore a striking resemblance to Rachel's husband, and Rachel would simply smile and steer the conversation in a different direction. The reality was far too intricate to convey in a brief moment. She had ceased to hope that anyone would comprehend. At the age of 2, Luna crossed paths with Rachel, who was introduced to Mark Dillard. He entered her life as many do when weariness dulls the edge of scrutiny, softly, supportively, and just when needed. He was an acquaintance of an acquaintance, a gentleman with a reliable position, consistent habits, and a courteous grin. Initially, Rachel discovered solace in his unwavering presence. Mark refrained from probing too deeply into the past. He brought groceries while she was unwell, repaired the leaky faucet in her bathroom, and volunteered to take care of Luna during her weekend shifts. For a time, she allowed herself to think that perhaps this was the essence of healing. Not the explosive thrill of fireworks or the intensity of passion, but rather a profound sense of peace. Yet tranquility, she discovered, can be misleading. As time passed, Mark's willingness to assist transformed into a form of dominance. He began to wonder about her whereabouts, the reasons for her delay, and the identity of the person she was conversing with. He expressed disapproval of her parenting, remarking that Luna was overly soft and spoiled. He refrained from striking. Initially, he remained silent, yet his words cut deep, his tone was frigid, and his presence became increasingly oppressive as the months went by. Luna felt uneasy in his presence, though she never voiced her discomfort outright. She held on to Rachel tighter, becoming increasingly silent and more reserved in Mark's presence. Rachel observed, yet she dismissed the notion, convincing herself that it was merely a figment of her imagination. Yet, a part of her remained vigilant. A profound instinct rooted in her nurturing nature held her back from completely relinquishing her trust. She reassured herself that she was being wise, merely cautious. Yet, the reality was that she no longer felt secure, and that frightened her more than she was willing to acknowledge. Mark had never inquired about Luna's father. He might have thought that he was gone, or that he had perished, or that he had never been significant. Rachel chose not to offer any corrections. Some tales are best kept in the shadows. Yet, as she endeavored to progress, the specter of Grayson hovered like a shadow over each decision she made. At times, she pondered what his reaction would be upon seeing Luna in the present moment. Whether he would feel remorse about departing. If he would even remember the contours of her face or the melody of her laughter. Rachel refrained from entertaining those thoughts frequently, as they brought no change to her situation. Grayson had chosen his path, and she had chosen hers. The priority now was to ensure Luna's happiness, safety, and innocence, shielding her from the sorrow that had led to her existence. In the stillness of the night, Rachel immersed herself in her painting, her fingers marked by vibrant hues, her thoughts swirling with unspoken possibilities. On an unremarkable Thursday afternoon, the world as we knew it changed completely. A serendipitous meeting in a bustling crowd unfolded with a glance that unearthed memories she believed were long forgotten. Unbeknownst to Rachel, the tale she believed had reached its conclusion was merely at the threshold of a new chapter. It was meant to be an ordinary day, just another routine sequence of tasks and sounds, culminating in Luna's cherished bedtime tale and Rachel drifting off to sleep with a brush still clutched in her hand. That afternoon, they found themselves at the airport, not for the purpose of traveling, but to welcome Rachel's friend back from a brief journey. Luna was determined to wear her beloved dress, the cheerful yellow one adorned with tiny stars, and had taken it upon herself to braid her hair, leaving Rachel to delicately spend 10 minutes attempting to perfect it without shattering her daughter's spirit. Mark arrived, uninvited yet determined, his presence rendering the atmosphere around them a touch too still, too intense. He grasped Rachel's elbow with a grip that felt a touch too firm as they navigated the terminal. And though his voice remained steady, it carried a familiar sharpness that she had learned to overlook in public settings. They lingered by the coffee kiosk when it unfolded. As Rachel knelt down to adjust Luna's shoelace, Mark moved aside to answer a call. In that moment, she became acutely aware, sensing the unsettling presence of an unseen observer. With a deliberate motion, she rose and pivoted, and it was then that she caught sight of him. Grayson. He stood at the far end of the terminal, a cup of coffee in hand, seemingly frozen in time. His blonde hair had been trimmed, and he donned a sleek gray coat over a tailored suit, embodying the image of the formidable executive that the world perceived him to be. Yet his face had turned ashen. His gaze was fixed not on her, but on Luna. Rachel found herself frozen in place. Her heart thudded fiercely, overpowering the clamor of the terminal, the overhead announcements, and the soft whispers of those nearby. Luna, unaware of the underlying tension, glanced upward and noticed him as well. She gazed at Grayson with her vivid blue eyes, the very same eyes he encountered in the mirror each day, and tilted her head in a manner that exuded innocent curiosity. She was unaware of his identity, yet there was something in his expression that compelled her to linger a moment longer. Grayson stepped forward with careful hesitation, as though he were inching closer to a dream he feared might shatter upon awakening. "Rachel," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. After for long years, that voice washed over her, overwhelming her senses. She parted her lips, yet silence enveloped her. Luna extended her hand, feeling the abrupt shift in her mother's demeanor. Grayson's gaze fell upon the child. His expression changed, became gentler, and then fell apart into a look of disbelief. "Is she?" He started to speak, but Rachel interrupted him. "We're waiting for someone," she said hastily, her tone overly tense, almost strained. "This moment isn't ideal." As she lifted Luna into her arms, she began to pivot, only to find Mark reappearing at that very moment. He shot Grayson a fleeting, wary look before turning his attention to Rachel. "Everything all right?" he inquired, his tone steady yet tinged with an underlying menace. Rachel remained silent. She merely nodded and turned away, not glancing back. Grayson chose not to follow. He remained motionless, the paper cup in his grasp losing warmth. He found himself unable to look away from the small child being carried off in Rachel's embrace. There was no need for a paternity test. He was aware. Every cell in his being cried out for it. That was his child. Yet Rachel had kept it from him. His breath hitched in his throat, and an odd, foreign ache settled in his chest. In a fleeting instant, Grayson, a man who believed he had mastered every aspect of his life, came to the profound realization that he had never felt more adrift. Grayson lay awake throughout the night. He lingered in his high-rise apartment, gazing out at the sprawling city skyline. The dinner he had prepared sat cold and forgotten on the counter, while his phone rested in his hand, leaving him at a loss for who to reach out to. His gaze was fixed solely on the little girl's face. Those captivating eyes. Those captivating eyes. He found himself trapped in a loop of memories from the airport. Rachel's shocked face etched in his mind, the instinctive way she had protected the child, and the man who stood next to her, his stance, his air of ownership, his very being looming large. Grayson's chest ached with unspoken questions and a guilt he had thought long forgotten, now resurfacing with intensity. As dawn broke, he found clarity in his thoughts and resolved to take action. He wiped his schedule clean for the next 3 days, leaving his assistant puzzled, and made his way across the city to the sole location that came to mind: Rachel's last known gallery. Years had passed since his last visit, yet the owner still held a vivid memory of her. "She no longer showcases her work here," the woman remarked with a hint of compassion, "but in the past, she rented studio space across town. Perhaps you could inquire in that location." With that delicate thread of a lead, Grayson navigated the roads without purpose, his thoughts tangled in a web of memories and endless possibilities. He was baffled by how she had managed to conceal it from him. Did she genuinely think he wouldn't be affected? Or had he provided her with every justification to believe he would leave once more? As the afternoon waned, he stood before a quaint brick structure adorned with a sign that proclaimed Artworks Collective. The air was thick with the scent of paint and aged timber, while the corridor was a gallery of abstract creations and student endeavors. A youthful aide directed him to the second floor. Studio 3. I believe she's here today. Grayson ascended the stairs with deliberate slowness, each footfall echoing in his mind more intensely than the last. Upon arriving at the door, he tapped gently once, then repeated the action. No response. As the door creaked open just a bit, he caught a glimpse of her within. Rachel sat at her work table, hair pulled back, brush in hand, utterly immersed in her canvas. Her presence, so intent and so well known, briefly caught him off guard. He paused, reluctant to break the silence. Yet when she glanced up, their gazes locked once more. This time she stood her ground. She gently placed the brush aside and rose to her feet. I shouldn't have arrived without warning, he murmured, his tone soft and filled with regret. However, I was uncertain about any other way to connect with you. She folded her arms, not in anger, but with a sense of caution. I didn't expect you to make an attempt at all. He entered with deliberate slowness. It's essential for me to uncover the truth. Rachel. Does she belong to me? Rachel remained silent for a few moments. She cast her gaze downward, let out a breath, and then gave a single nod. Absolutely. Luna is her name. She is 4 years old. Grayson experienced the impact of the words as if they were a blow to his heart. For that indicated she was already expecting when he departed. He collapsed onto the nearest bench, his hands quivering ever so slightly. Why was I not informed? Her response arrived swiftly, yet devoid of any ill intent. You departed without a farewell. Your message was unmistakable. There was no place for me in your life. I couldn't allow my daughter to grow up with any doubts about her worth. He shut his eyes. The shame coiled within him, cold and unyielding. I was unaware. I didn't even allow you the opportunity to share with me. I, Rachel, have committed the gravest error of my existence. A prolonged silence lingered between them. Then Rachel moved ahead. She is not an error. She embodies it all. Your money and your name were never necessary for me. Serenity was essential for me, and I needed to safeguard that. Grayson gazed at her intently, noticing the weary lines under her eyes, the resilience in her stance, and the silent rage that stemmed from enduring solitude. May I have the opportunity to meet her? He inquired, his tone barely above a murmur. Refrain from intervening, simply to understand her. Rachel paused, caught in a struggle between her intuition and the allure of what could be. She nodded, her voice resolute. Just one stipulation. If you choose to be part of her life, you must commit fully or not at all. Stay present. Commitments upheld. Grayson held her gaze, and for the first time he didn't shy away. This time I'm staying put. For the first time since the airport, a gentle warmth appeared in Rachel's expression. Only a small amount. It hints at the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, the door remained slightly ajar. Grayson dedicated the following days to a level of preparation he had never experienced before. It was no longer focused on presentations or business deals. It was about the experience of being recognized, not as a leader, not as someone who had turned his back on affection, but as a parent encountering his child for the very first time. That notion filled him with both fear and a sense of humility. He had established businesses, engaged in discussions with governments, addressed audiences at international conferences, yet nothing had ever left him feeling so unsteady as the prospect of confronting a 4-year-old girl who was completely unaware of his identity. And yet, in the face of fear, his desire burned brighter than it ever had for anything else. Rachel honored her promise and decided to rendezvous at a serene park located just beyond the city limits. She selected a spot where Luna could find comfort, a quaint grassy area featuring a wooden playground and a bench nestled under the gentle shade of a willow tree. Upon Grayson's arrival, both she and Luna were already present. Luna sat in the sandbox, her back turned to them, a small sun hat casting a shadow over her face. With a plastic shovel clutched in one hand, she wore a look of fierce determination. Rachel lingered at a distance, her arms folded, embodying a calm vigilance in her posture. With just one glance, She conveyed to Grayson that this was her domain, governed by her own set of rules, and any sign of hesitation on his part would result in the door being closed once more. He acknowledged with a nod and moved closer, his actions deliberate, aiming to preserve the tranquility. Rachel softly called out to Luna, and the little girl turned, pushing her hair away from her face. Her gaze met Grayson's, and he noticed the brief spark of familiarity once more, even though she couldn't quite grasp the reason behind it. She inclined her head with that familiar inquisitive gesture she had displayed at the airport. "Luna," Rachel said, kneeling next to her, "this is my longtime friend Grayson. He expressed a desire to meet with you." Luna gazed at him for an extended moment, then blinked and finally spoke, "Hi!" Her voice rang out, bright and fearless, carrying a sense of clarity that was unmistakable. Grayson knelt beside her, a sudden realization washing over him about the triviality of his tailored coat and expensive watch. "Greetings, Luna," he murmured gently. "What a stunning castle you are constructing." Her smile radiated joy, reminiscent of the delight children express when their universe is acknowledged, and without a moment's pause, she offered him another shovel. "Your assistance would be appreciated," Rachel observed from the bench, a lump forming in her throat as she witnessed the two of them fall into the cadence of their shared play. Grayson held back, refraining from pushing for a connection. He inquired about her favorite color, attentively absorbed her tale of the princess turtle residing within the sandcastle, and chuckled as she playfully buried his hand beneath a mound of pebbles. For more than an hour, he remained at her level, demonstrating patience, curiosity, and openness. And Rachel, against her better judgment, found herself starting to hope. Eventually, Luna became weary and nestled into Rachel's lap, clutching a juice box. Grayson lingered close, his tone subdued, his demeanor earnest. He described her as extraordinary. "Rachel, your work has been truly remarkable." She nodded, her silence heavy with uncertainty, caught in a moment where words eluded her grasp. The quiet lingered in the air, heavy with the unspoken words that had accumulated over the years. At last, Grayson broke the silence once more. "I understand that I may not have earned a spot in her life. I understand that the past cannot be undone. However, I am eager to give it a shot. I desire to be present, not merely for this moment, but for all that lies ahead." Rachel gazed down at Luna, who had drifted off in her embrace, her expression serene and full of trust. "It's no longer about my desires," she stated. "It's focused on her requirements. If you're going to embark on this journey, commit to it wholeheartedly. One does not vanish when faced with complexity. You remain steadfast and unwavering. She's not an experience you can merely try out. She embodies an entire universe." Grayson gave a slight nod. "I comprehend, and I am prepared." He was sincere. It was evident in his expression. Not the refined facade of a corporate leader, but the genuine, heartfelt openness of a man who had at last ceased his flight. Her lips remained uncurled. Not at this moment. Yet, the barrier she had constructed over the years began to tremble, even if just a fraction. Perhaps, just perhaps, this wasn't the conclusion of the tale she believed had already been penned. Perhaps, it marked the start of a journey they had never dared to envision. Grayson started to appear subtly, never imposing but consistently there. He sought Rachel's approval before every visit and always respected her choices. He showed up ahead of time for weekend park adventures, brought Luna the picture books from his youth, and memorized the names of all her stuffed animals without ever checking his phone. Luna, initially hesitant, gradually opened up to him in a way that took even Rachel by surprise. Grayson had a unique way of engaging, always attentive, never brushing aside her inquiries. He allowed her to ramble on about rainbows, dinosaurs, and princesses, never once hurrying her along. He created space for her, not to escape his reality but to place her at its heart. After a long time, Rachel sensed a change occurring, not only within Grayson but also within her own being. From the kitchen window, she observed them in the backyard, where sidewalk chalk transformed the ground into a canvas. Luna's laughter filled the air as she crafted crooked suns and stick figures, while Grayson knelt beside her, fully immersed in the moment. Rachel found herself reluctant to acknowledge the truth, yet the image of them together pulled at the seams of her carefully hidden emotions. She recalled the man she had once loved, the one who knew her coffee order by heart and held her hand at her first gallery show. She pondered whether that man had ever really departed or if he had merely been concealed beneath the burdens of ambition and fear. However, not all aspects were straightforward. Mark had not slipped away without making a scene. Once Rachel requested him to leave, he started making late-night calls, appearing without warning, challenging her decisions, and hurling accusations with a bitterness that twisted her stomach in knots. Rachel endeavored to shield Luna from the turmoil, yet the tension lingered in the atmosphere like an electric charge. Grayson observed the subtle shift in her stance, the way her gaze flickered to the door each time a vehicle rolled by the house. One evening, following a notably intense phone call that left Rachel clearly unsettled, Grayson lingered after Luna had gone to bed. He refrained from urging her to speak. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, hands neatly folded, his demeanor composed yet earnest. "You're no longer by yourself," he said. "You don't need to bear all of this alone." Rachel gazed at him intently, a flicker of emotion dancing in her eyes. "I've been managing on my own for such a long time that I find it difficult to accept assistance from others." "There's no rush to solve it all tonight," he said softly. "However, I have no intention of leaving. It's essential for you to be aware of that." She nodded slowly, the words resonating within her more profoundly than she had anticipated. For the first time since Luna's arrival, Rachel permitted herself to embrace the subtle power of another, if only for a fleeting moment. That evening, once Grayson had departed, she lingered in the threshold of Luna's room, observing her peaceful slumber. The young child nestled comfortably with her cherished blanket, her thumb gently hovering by her lips, a serene expression gracing her face. In that moment, Rachel understood she yearned for that same tranquility, not only for her daughter but for her own sake as well. In the weeks that followed, Rachel and Grayson found themselves moving in a silent harmony. Though they weren't officially a couple, the closeness in their co-parenting led others to believe there was more to their relationship. Luna started calling him "my daddy" on her own, and each time she did, Rachel felt a lump form in her throat. In fleeting instances, subtle and unpretentious, she would catch a glimpse of Grayson absorbed in a book on the couch, with Luna playfully draped over him, and the notion of a second chance began to seem within reach. Yet, Rachel continued to be cautious. She sought something beyond mere consistency. She sought assurance that Grayson grasped the significance of remaining, not merely in body, but in spirit as well. She had to understand that he would stand firm, regardless of how tangled the situation grew. Grayson, commendably, never sought more than she was prepared to offer. He took his time. He was caught off guard. He simply remained. Slowly but surely, the barriers that separated them started to fall away. It wasn't the grand gestures or bold declarations of love that mattered, but rather the simple, everyday actions Grayson took to demonstrate his genuine commitment. Not solely for Luna, however, for Rachel as well. Nearly 3 months had passed since that day in the park, and during this time, Grayson had established himself as a constant presence in the lives of both Rachel and Luna. He was present for Saturday morning pancakes, for bedtime stories when Rachel had to work late, for Luna's first ballet recital, where he sat in the front row with his phone raised like a proud father. He lovingly painted Luna's bedroom in a gentle shade of lavender and adorned the walls with glow-in-the-dark stars, all at her request. Crucially, he never crossed any lines that Rachel hadn't willingly chosen to shift herself. A silent bond had formed between them, forged through mutual duties, tentative smiles, and a past they no longer shunned but had come to honor. Rachel started to perceive Grayson in a new light, not merely as a father, but as the man he could have been all along, had fear not held him back. He inquired about her creations, about the time he had lost, about her current needs. He had stopped attempting to mend what was already done. He sought to pay tribute by presenting himself in a new light in the here and now. And Rachel, while still reluctant to put a name to it, could no longer ignore the shift in the atmosphere surrounding them. Some glances held a touch of intensity, stretching beyond the ordinary. On certain evenings, they would tidy up after dinner in a quiet understanding, her hand lightly grazing his arm, and neither felt the need to withdraw. One evening, as Luna drifted into slumber while watching her beloved film, Rachel discovered Grayson on the balcony of her apartment, gazing out at the sprawling cityscape. She offered him a cup of tea and rested against the railing next to him. The night enveloped them in silence, the sky a rich, deep blue, and for a moment, words escaped both of their lips. Then, without turning to face her, Grayson murmured gently, "At times, I find myself contemplating the possibilities that might have unfolded had I chosen to stay." Rachel's throat constricted, not from the pain of the thought, but because it was a notion she had entertained countless times herself. She took her time to reply. Upon doing so, her voice carried a serene quality. "In that case, Luna would lose her essence. Perhaps we wouldn't find ourselves in this situation now. For a long time, my feelings toward you, Grayson, were filled with animosity. However, that is no longer the case for me. You have returned, and you have arrived." He faced her, his expression unfiltered. "Every single day, the weight of that regret lingers on my mind. Yet I strive to become the type of man she can take pride in. The type of man who requires no defense from her." Rachel locked eyes with him, and an unvoiced connection lingered in the air. A subtle forgiveness, unspoken yet deeply felt. She extended her hand toward his, if only for a moment, and he grasped it delicately, as though it were the most delicate thing he had ever encountered. It lacked any grand declaration or sweeping gesture. The atmosphere was calm and unwavering, rich with significance. Later that night, after Grayson had departed, Rachel found herself once more at Luna's door, observing her daughter as she slept peacefully, her tiny hand clutching a stuffed bear. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to envision a future that transcended mere survival, focusing instead on the creation of something complete. She was beginning to perceive it clearly. Not only Grayson in Luna's life, but in hers as well. Not merely a remnant of what once was, but as an individual who could contribute to the creation of something fresh. A companion, a dad, perhaps even beyond that. She hesitated to voice her thoughts, yet the emotion had taken hold within her, and it was blossoming. Not due to any necessity for rescue. Yet, for the first time, someone had genuinely revealed to her the essence of commitment. The morning of Luna's 5th birthday was gentle and radiant, the sort of morning that seemed like a treasure. Rachel stirred from her slumber, the soft patter of little feet echoing through the hallway, accompanied by Luna's hushed, eager whispers as she leaned toward the window. Rachel smiled to herself as she quietly slipped out of bed, making her way to the kitchen where the enticing aroma of fresh cinnamon rolls began to envelop the room. Grayson arrived early, using the spare key Rachel had finally entrusted to him the week before, a gesture that conveyed more than any words ever could. He stood at the stove in jeans and a gray t-shirt, barefoot, humming softly as he flipped pancakes and poured warm syrup into a small pitcher. As Rachel walked in, his face brightened with a serene, satisfied look that she had unknowingly begun to seek out. They navigated the morning with the ease of a family seasoned in this routine. Luna eagerly ripped open the wrapping paper, her laughter ringing out as she discovered the art set Grayson had picked just for her, filled with glitter markers and miniature canvases. Rachel had prepared her beloved chocolate cake the previous night, adorning it with vibrant rainbow sprinkles. As they sang happy birthday, Luna stood between them, grasping their hands, her smile so broad that it brought a lump to Rachel's throat. Grayson locked eyes with her over the flickering candles, conveying a silent understanding that, in this unassuming moment, something profound had mended. As the afternoon wore on and the guests departed, leaving the apartment in a serene hush, Rachel found herself on the balcony, the soft sounds of Luna's slumber drifting from her room. Grayson approached her, carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea, and together they observed the sun dip beneath the skyline, casting a gentle glow of warmth around them. The quiet that enveloped them had transformed. It was no longer burdensome but rather rich, known, and nearly serene. Rachel faced him, a silent weight lingering just behind her gaze. "I never really thought I'd have this," she said softly. "It's not solely about the parenting aspect, but also this tranquility. This sensation that a presence is nearby and is not going anywhere." Grayson extended his hand toward hers, a gesture that spoke volumes, firm and resolute. "For years, I crafted an existence that appeared flawless to the world, yet it felt empty within. It wasn't until I laid eyes on Luna that I realized what had been absent from my life, until our paths crossed once more. All that holds significance for me is present in this very moment." Rachel experienced a sensation unfurling within her chest, a feeling she had long kept at bay, a hope that had transformed from delicate to steadfast, anchored in a tangible reality. She gazed at Grayson, not as the one who had shattered her heart, but as the individual who had diligently sought to repair it, gradually, thoughtfully, bit by bit. "You were mistaken about something?" she remarked, a subtle smile gracing her lips. "What is that?" he inquired, his thumb gently gliding over her knuckles. "You mentioned that Luna inspired you to improve yourself. However, I believe you were already there. You simply weren't aware of how to reveal it to others." Grayson remained silent. He leaned in and kissed her softly, with a certainty that arises only when all doubts have been laid to rest. It was neither hurried nor uncertain. It was brimming with all that they had struggled to restore. As they separated, Rachel leaned her forehead against his, shutting her eyes and allowing herself to embrace the significance of the moment. Within the confines of her room, Luna shifted in her slumber, softly whispering in her dreams, which felt tranquil and secure. On the balcony, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city started to buzz, Rachel and Grayson found solace in a tranquility they had cultivated. Not through flawless moments, but through understanding, endurance, and a love that endures, patiently lingering until both are prepared to reconnect. To me, the conclusion of this narrative is more than mere closure. It embodies a subtle victory. What started as a heart-wrenching, incomplete tale of love transformed into a journey of profound significance, encompassing growth, redemption, and the decision to remain when walking away would have been simpler. Grayson's journey transcended mere reclamation. It was a profound exploration of earning through vulnerability and unwavering consistency. Rachel, bearing the burdens of heartbreak and motherhood with unwavering strength, sought not a savior, but a true companion. And Luna, the essence of it all, discovered herself enveloped in a love that had once been broken, but was now beautifully restored. The beauty of this conclusion resides in its authenticity, chaotic, gradual, profoundly human, and that's what imbues it with strength. It's not an idealized fantasy, but it's the type of romance that endures over time.